In Venice, not everything beautiful is safe. That's something they don't tell the tourists, not on the postcards or the gondola tours. Sure, the canals sparkle under the moon, and the basilicas shine gold in the morning light. But beneath the beauty, Venice has teeth. Ask the night nurses at Ospedale di Santa Lucia, and they'll tell you. Santa Lucia isn't a regular hospital. It's a place for the dying. A hospice. A night ward for the terminally ill. People come here for one reason only, to fade away quietly, preferably with less pain and more morphine. But the staff all know the one rule of Ward 9. Never put a patient in Bed 9. It's not superstition. It's survival. Bed 9 is at the far end of Ward 9, near the window that looks out over the foggy canals. It's an old iron bed, older than the rest. The kind with wheels that don't work anymore and a mattress that sinks in the middle like a dead lung. They've tried to replace it 3 times. Each time, something happens. One time the replacement bed rolled into the canal during a storm. Another time it caught fire during a routine cleaning. The third time, the new bed arrived but the delivery team never made it out of the parking garage. Their van was found running, doors open, no one inside. So the old bed stayed. And the nurses made a rule: skip Bed 9. Leave it empty. Just drape a white sheet over it, and pretend it isn't there. That's what they did for years. Until the night when Hassan al-Ghani arrived. It was October 14th, the first cold night of the season. The canals were misty. The air smelled like salt and rot. In Venice, death comes in quietly, like fog under a door. Angela Moretti, the night supervisor, was doing her rounds when the ambulance brought in a man from the mainland. His chart said stage 4 cancer, terminal, no treatment left. He spoke almost no Italian. His papers were Arabic, from somewhere in Tunisia. The paramedics said he kept whispering something over and over. Angela stood by the stretcher and listened. His lips moved softly, over and over. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya Malik al-Maut, Ya Karen. Angela didn't understand the words, but she felt a cold prickling crawl over her arms. Her skin knew before her brain did. Something wasn't right. The man's name was Hassan al-Ghani, age 73. His eyes were sharp, though his body was crumbling. His hands trembled, but his mouth kept moving, whispering prayers. Angela tried to comfort him. She held his hand. But when she called for Bed 8, Hassan shook his head. No. Bed 9. I must go to Bed 9. Angela frowned. She thought maybe he was confused. 9? She asked, in slow Italian. You mean 8? Hassan's lips tightened. Bed 9, Signora, please. The prayers must be said there. His eyes locked onto hers, dark and wet and desperate. Angela hesitated. She remembered the rule. Never use Bed 9. But something in Hassan's eyes scared her more than the rule. So she broke it. She rolled his stretcher to the end of the ward, past the 4 stands and morphine pumps, and stopped at the old bed beneath the window. That night, the nurses whispered about it in the break room. Angela sipped stale coffee, hands shaking. Why did you do it? Asked Luca, the young nurse with tattoos on his knuckles. I don't know, Angela whispered back. He looked at me like he'd already seen what was coming. Nobody laughed. At 3:11 a.m., Hassan died quietly in Bed 9. The monitors flatlined. The machines beeped once, then stopped. Angela closed his eyes and whispered a Catholic prayer over him, even though she knew it wasn't his faith. But before he died, Hassan whispered something else. A phrase she'd never heard before. She leaned close and caught the words on his last breath. Al-Marid al-Mutarik. Later, she would look it up. It meant the burned jinn. The first nurse the jinn visited was Luca. It was 2 nights after Hassan's death. Luca was on break, smoking behind the hospital near the water's edge. The fog was thick. The moon hung low over the canals. He heard footsteps, soft but strange, like someone dragging bare feet over stone. When he turned, he saw the figure. It stood at the edge of the dock, wrapped in a surgeon's gown burned black at the edges. Its skin was cracked and scorched, like meat left too long on a grill. But the worst part was the face. No eyes. No nose. Just a burned, melted shape with a mouth too wide. "Luca," the djinn whispered. Luca dropped his cigarette. What do you want?" "I want to help you." Luca's mouth went dry. "I don't need help. Everyone needs something," the djinn whispered. "I know what you wish." And the thing was, it was true. Luca had a secret. He was drowning in gambling debt. His sister needed surgery. He wanted money so badly it burned behind his eyes. "I can give it to you," the djinn whispered, stepping closer. Luca should have run. He knew that. But he nodded. The next morning, Luca woke up with 10,000 euros in his bank account. Just like that. No phone calls. No job promotion. No lottery ticket. But the money was there, real, spendable, shiny in his online banking app. He used it fast. Paid off his sister's medical bills. Settled with a man named Giorgio, who had been threatening to break his knees. For 2 days, Luca thought maybe he'd gotten lucky. Maybe there really was magic in Venice. Maybe the canals weren't so bad after all. But then the dreams started. He dreamed of flames. Of skin melting. Of a burned face leaning close, whispering his name. And 3 nights later, when he looked in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., Luca saw his own eyes glowing red in the reflection. When he blinked, his real eyes stayed brown. But the reflection didn't blink. It grinned at him instead. The second nurse was Elena. She worked the night shift too. Single mother, no time for superstition. She thought the whole bed 9 thing was stupid. After Hassan's death, she started dreaming in Arabic. Words she didn't understand slipped into her thoughts. One night, on her way home across the wet cobblestones, she met the burned figure in the alley behind Santa Lucia. Its mouth moved without sound for a long moment. Then the djinn spoke, in perfect Italian. "Elena, you want time, don't you?" She froze. "Time for your son. Time to stop running. Time to breathe." Her heart squeezed tight. "Yes," she whispered. The djinn reached out with a hand like burned charcoal. "I can give it to you." Elena got what she asked for. Her ex-husband, who had been suing her for custody, died in a car crash the next morning. Now she had time. All the time she wanted. But strange things happened afterward. Her son started talking to people who weren't there. He drew pictures of a burned man in the corner of his room. At night, Elena heard whispering in the walls of their apartment. And her phone rang at exactly 3:11 a.m. every night, the minute Hassan died. When she answered, she heard only breathing. Angela started noticing the changes. Ward 9 grew quieter. Too quiet. The patients died faster. Their bodies grew cold even before the monitors flatlined. Their mouths twitched in strange ways, as if whispering prayers they didn't know. And the nurses whispered too. They whispered about the burned man. Some said he was a djinn. Some said he was a Korean, a spirit twin of the dead. Some said he was the echo of a plague doctor from centuries ago. Angela stayed late one night and searched the old hospital records. She found a page in an archive, written in Latin and Arabic. The translation chilled her blood. In the 1600s, during the Black Death, a sorcerer from the East had been burned alive by Venetian priests. But they didn't kill him. They locked him in a spell, inside the hospital itself. Bed 9 was his gate. And someone had just opened it. The last to meet the djinn was Angela herself. It happened on a Thursday, when the fog was thickest. She was alone in the chapel of Santa Lucia, lighting candles for the dead. The old chapel smelled of wax and mold. The painted saints on the walls looked down with tired eyes. And then the candles blew out, one by one. She felt breath on her neck. "Angela." The voice was soft, almost kind. "You work so hard. You pray so much. But what do you really want? Her lips trembled. I don't want anyone else to suffer. The burned Jinn's hand touched her shoulder. Its skin crackled like paper. I can give you that. She closed her eyes. Please, she whispered. Make it stop. And the Jinn smiled. Because it was the wrong prayer. Angela locked herself in the chapel that night. She knew it was too late. Her prayer had been answered, but not in the way she meant. The patients stopped breathing. The machines all fell silent. Even the dying didn't suffer anymore, because now they were all gone. Every bed in Ward 9 stood empty. The nurses' break room was empty too. No footsteps. No voices. Just the sound of water lapping against the ancient stones of the hospital walls. And somewhere outside, in the fog, the burned Jinn whispered to someone new. Venice has doors people forget about. There are doors that open into stairwells that don't go anywhere. Doors that lead into canals when the water's too high. Doors bricked up centuries ago, but still breathing behind the stone. The door to bed 9 was like that. After Angela locked herself in the chapel, the hospital went quiet. The day shift came in the next morning and found nothing. No patients. No nurses. No night staff. Just empty beds and humming machines, screens still glowing in the dark. Ward 9's beds were cold, their sheets smooth as marble. Except for bed 9. The sheet there was gone. The bed was gone too. All that was left was the old iron wheels, rusted and blackened by heat. Angela stayed in the chapel for 3 days. She didn't eat. She didn't drink. She prayed until her lips bled. Her rosary beads clicked like teeth in her shaking hands. But prayers don't always work the way you want. Sometimes they get twisted on the way up. Angela realized that too late. Because the Jinn had already given her what she asked for. No more suffering. No more patience. No more sickness. No more pain. Just silence. The worst kind of silence. On the third night, as the fog wrapped the city like wet cotton, Angela heard footsteps in the chapel. Soft. Barefoot. The burned Jinn stood at the altar. His robes still smoldered at the edges. His face was half shadow, half charcoal. But his mouth smiled. Angela, he whispered. She tried to pray again, but the words stuck in her throat. You wanted peace, the Jinn said softly. Now you have it. She looked up at the stained glass window. The saints in the glass seemed to turn their faces away. What happens now? She whispered. The Jinn tilted his head. Now you keep the door open. Nobody talks about Ospedale di Santa Lucia anymore. It closed 2 weeks after the incident. The official report says it was structural damage. Old foundations, risk of collapse. But in Venice, people know better. They say the hospital didn't close. It just shifted. Sometimes at night, if you walk near the canals, you can still hear the bed wheels creaking. The sound of iron turning slowly, scraping against old stone floors. And sometimes, in the mist, you might see a light in the window of Ward 9. A single white sheet. Moving. People keep disappearing near Santa Lucia. Tourists. Drunks. A few night nurses who worked in other hospitals, the ones who thought it was all a joke. Their names end up on the list. And the list keeps getting longer. Because the Jinn needs new patients. Angela is still in the chapel. Her body is there, but her mind is somewhere else. She sits in the front pew, rosary in hand, eyes wide open. Her lips move, but no sound comes out now. Because she finally realized the truth. Her last prayer wasn't to God. It was to something else. Some people think hospitals are places of healing. That's true during the day. But at night, hospitals change. Especially the old ones. Hospital de Santa Brigida, in Seville, Spain, had been standing for over 600 years. It started as a monastery. Then it became a plague ward. Later it turned into a hospital. Over the centuries, people had died there in every way you can imagine. fever, knife wounds, childbirth, cancer, the flu, COVID, you name it. Arturo Rivera thought about that on his first night on the job. He was 53. A retired cop. Bad heart, bum knee, not much of a pension. His cousin Miguel got him the security gig at Santa Brigida. It was supposed to be simple. Sit in the office. Watch the cameras. Lock the doors. Call if there's trouble. But there was one rule. Miguel told him that first night, while they shared vending machine coffee under the buzzing lights of the security office. Between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m., you stay here. You don't leave the office. No smoke breaks. No bathroom trips. No patrols. Arturo had laughed at first. Thought Miguel was pulling his leg. You serious? Miguel's eyes didn't blink. Dead serious. Miguel leaned in closer. His voice dropped to a whisper, even though they were alone. We call it La Promesa del Vigilante. The watchman's vow. Arturo smirked. What is this? Some ghost story for rookies. Miguel's hand landed hard on Arturo's shoulder. Listen to me, Primo. This hospital is different. You think it's just old walls and sick people, but it's more than that. Between 2 and 4, this place doesn't belong to us. Then who does it belong to? Arturo asked, half smiling. Miguel's eyes shifted toward the monitors. You don't want to know. Arturo wanted to press further, but Miguel didn't give him the chance. He handed Arturo a crucifix on a chain. Keep this in your pocket. And remember the vow. For 6 months, Arturo kept the rule. It wasn't hard. The hospital was boring at night. Quiet. Still. Most nights, he sat in the gray plastic chair, sipping cheap coffee and watching the cameras. The monitors showed the ER, the ICU, the operating rooms, and the long stone corridors of the old South Wing, the part of the hospital nobody used anymore. He would flip through a paperback novel, or sometimes scroll through his phone. Occasionally, he'd play solitaire or close his eyes for 10 minutes at a time. But he never left the security office between 2 and 4. He kept the vow, just like Miguel said. Until the night he broke it. It was a Thursday night in May. Seville was hot. Humid. The kind of night where sweat sticks to your skin and the air smells like iron. The clock on the wall clicked past 2 a.m. Arturo leaned back in his chair. His stomach made a small, gurgling noise. His coffee was cold, but he drank it anyway. That's when the radio crackled. Security. Arturo. Are you there? It was Nurse Carla, from the ICU. Her voice sounded shaky. He picked up the walkie-talkie. Go ahead, Carla. Can someone check the south wing? She whispered. We're hearing footsteps. Arturo frowned. Nobody's supposed to be in the south wing at night. It's sealed off. I know, she whispered. But there's something down there. Arturo's eyes went to camera 14. That was the south wing corridor. The oldest part of Santa Brigida. The video feed was black and white. A little fuzzy. But he saw movement. A line of people. 20, maybe 30. All walking slowly, heads down, feet dragging. At the front of the line was a man in a white coat. Arturo squinted at the screen. The people on the monitor didn't move like normal patients. Their shoulders slumped. Their legs shuffled. Some of them leaned on walkers. Others dragged 4 poles behind them. Their hospital gowns swayed as they walked. And their faces were wrong. Gray skin. Sunken cheeks. Eyes open but glassy, like dolls. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. At the front of the line was the man in the white coat. A doctor, maybe. But Arturo knew, in the back of his mind, that wasn't a doctor. His face was too smooth. His smile was too wide. And where his eyes should have been, there were 2 dark holes. Arturo's stomach twisted. He should have stayed in the office. He should have called Miguel. He should have remembered the vow. But old habits die hard. He had been a cop for 22 years. He wasn't the type to sit back while something strange happened on his watch. His hand reached for the flashlight. His legs pushed him up from the chair. "This is probably a camera glitch," he whispered to himself. "Maybe a system loop." But deep down, he knew better. The clock said 2:13 a.m. And he was about to break the rule. The south corridor was colder than the rest of the hospital. Arturo's boots echoed on the old stone floor. His flashlight beam jittered, shaking slightly in his hand. The walls smelled like wet plaster and incense, a smell he had never noticed before. He passed the old surgical theater. The windows were dark. The lights above flickered. And then he saw them. The procession was real. Not just on the camera. Not just on the monitor. They were right in front of him now. A long line of patients, dead, half dead, somewhere in between. They shuffled down the corridor like puppets on strings. Their mouths whispered something he couldn't understand. Some carried oxygen tanks. Some wore hospital gowns stained with blood or bile. At the front of the line walked the doctor in white. Arturo froze. His legs refused to move. The doctor's face was smooth, like porcelain. His lips were stretched in an unnatural smile. And his eyes were hollow holes, two empty pits. The doctor stepped forward, leaving the procession behind. His coat fluttered slightly, even though there was no wind. "I am Dr. Khalid ibn Rahman," he whispered. His voice was soft, but Arturo heard it inside his head, like someone whispering directly into his skull. "I cure death," the doctor said. Arturo's lips parted. "What?" he croaked. "I was once a man," the doctor said. "Now I am something else. A healer of souls. A breaker of walls." The doctor's smile widened, showing too many teeth. "More than a human mouth should hold." "These patients were dying," the jinn whispered. "So I cured them. Now they are mine." Arturo tried to step back. But his feet stayed planted on the cold tiles. "You left your post," the doctor said, tilting his head. "And now you've entered my ward." The doctor reached into his white coat and pulled out a clipboard. It was dripping with blood. The paper on it glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Arturo's eyes locked onto the top line. His own name was written there. Arturo Rivera. In his own handwriting. "I didn't sign that," he whispered. "But you did," the jinn whispered back. "The moment you stepped into this corridor." Arturo's hands shook. His crucifix felt heavy in his pocket. He gripped it hard, but the metal was hot, burning his palm. The jinn doctor pushed the clipboard toward him. "Sign fully," the doctor said. "Join the cure. Become part of the treatment." Arturo's flashlight flickered. Behind the doctor, the line of patients grew longer. And as his eyes adjusted, Arturo saw something worse. Some of the people in the line weren't patients. They wore security uniforms. Just like him. Old patches. Different eras. Some with badges from the 1970s, others from the 1950s. Arturo recognized the face of Javier Mendez, a guard who had vanished in 1981. They still talked about him in whispers at the hospital. There he was, gray-skinned, lips moving silently in the procession. At the back of the line was a man who looked just like Arturo himself. Older. Hollow-eyed. Wearing his uniform. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was him. "I can't," Arturo whispered. "I can't join you." The doctor's smile stretched even wider. "You already have." The clipboard pulsed in Arturo's hand. His fingers closed around the pen before he could stop himself. His name burned onto the paper, glowing brighter, brighter, until the letters weren't ink anymore. They were fire. The corridor twisted. The walls breathed in and out like lungs. The hospital's ceiling peeled back into darkness. The procession moved forward, and Arturo took his place in the line. His mouth whispered along with the others now. "I will watch. I will guard. I will never leave again. The doctor in white led them through a door made of shadow, into a world where no sunrise would ever come. At 7:03 a.m., the day shift arrived at Hospital de Santa Brigida. Sunlight spilled into the lobby through the stained glass windows. The morning smelled of bleach and old stone. Nurse Carla came in first. Her hair was tied back. Her shoes squeaked on the floor. Something felt wrong immediately. The hospital was empty. The nurse's station was unmanned. The ICU was silent. Charts lay open on the desks. Cups of cold coffee sat next to still warm computers. She checked room 12. No patient. Room 14. Empty. Room 16. Sheets thrown back. Monitor still beeping, but nobody in the bed. Her throat tightened. She walked faster, heart pounding, calling out softly. Hello. Dr. Martin? Arturo. Silence. She checked the ER, but it was the same. Beds empty. Machines running. No patients. No doctors. No night staff. Not a single soul. Except for one thing. In the security office, the monitors were still on. And on camera 14, the south wing corridor showed the same thing it always did during those hours. A long procession of figures. The camera feed flickered, but it kept running. Carla leaned in close to the monitor, her fingers shaking. She saw the doctor in white at the front of the line. His coat fluttered, even though there was no breeze. His head tilted to one side, as if listening to something no human could hear. Behind him shuffled the patients. And behind the patients were the guards. Some wore old uniforms from the 1950s. Others had badges from the 80s. There were familiar faces in that line, faces that had gone missing over the years. And there, near the front, was Arturo Rivera. He wore his security uniform. His badge glinted on his chest. His lips moved, whispering something over and over. The same phrase, again and again. I will watch. I will guard. I will never leave again. At 8:15 a.m., Carla called Miguel. Her voice was flat. Hollow. Like someone talking in a dream. Miguel? Something's wrong. Miguel sounded half asleep on the other end. What is it? Arturo's gone. The patients are gone. The night staff too. But the monitors. Her voice cracked. They're still there on camera 14. The procession. There was silence on the line. When Miguel finally spoke, his voice was low. They got him. What do you mean? I told him not to leave between 2 and 4, Miguel whispered. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Miguel sat in his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, eyes staring at the floor. His hand shook as he lit a cigarette. His grandfather had told him about the deal when he was a boy. La promesa del vigilante. Hospitals can't just heal the living. They have to deal with the dead too. Especially in old cities, where history stacks like bricks. In Seville, the line between life and death thins at certain hours. In certain places. Santa Brigida was built on plague pits. There had been whispered pacts long before there were medical degrees. A bargain had been struck. An exchange. Give the dead a corridor to walk. Let them shuffle between worlds. Let the Jinn doctor do his work between 2 and 4. In return, the hospital would keep running. But if the watchman broke his vow, then the bargain shifted. And the debt came due. In Geneva, there's a hospital people don't like to talk about. It's not the biggest one. Not the prettiest. It sits near the edge of the city, away from the tourist spots and fancy cafes. Locals know it by a different name. The Cold Hospital. The real name is Clinique Saint-Antoine, but the staff call it cold because of what happens there at night. Especially in the radiology wing. If you work the night shift, you know the rule. At exactly 3:13 a.m., no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you will hear a baby crying. Marie DeVoe heard it first, back in January. She was alone in the radiology office, finishing up reports. The night was long and still, the snow falling outside the windows in soft gray sheets. At exactly 3:13 a.m., she heard it. A baby's cry. Thin, wet, and shivering. It wasn't coming from the maternity wing, that was on the other side of the hospital. It wasn't coming from pediatrics, that floor was closed at night. The sound came from the MRI room. The cry echoed down the cold hall, soft but sharp, like a needle sliding into her ear. Marie checked the monitors. Nothing unusual. The MRI machine was in standby mode, humming softly. No patients were scheduled. The last scan had ended at midnight. Still, the crying continued. So Marie got up, grabbed her badge, and walked toward the MRI suite. Her footsteps echoed on the clean linoleum floor. The closer she got, the colder the air felt, like stepping into a freezer. When she reached the MRI room, she pushed the door open carefully. The machine was empty. The giant white tube sat in the middle of the room like a plastic coffin. The sound of the baby crying stopped the moment she stepped inside. Silence. But Marie swore she could still feel it, vibrating in her chest, like something small was crying inside her ribcage. The next night, it happened again. Same time, 3:13 a.m. This time, the cry came through the intercom system. The speakers crackled, and then the baby's voice filled the entire radiology department. Thin. Sad. Hungry. Marie pressed the intercom button to answer, but there was no one on the other end. When she looked at the monitor again, something had changed. The MRI logs showed a scan had been performed at 3:13 a.m. But nobody had entered the room. The scan data had saved itself to the system. Marie called Dr. Lucas Werner, the head of radiology. By the time he arrived, Marie was shaking. "I didn't do this," she whispered. "Look." She opened the folder marked Autoscan 313. On the screen, a set of ultrasound images loaded. Not MRI. Ultrasound. Which was impossible. The MRI machine couldn't create ultrasound scans. The images showed something curled inside a sac. At first glance, it looked like a human fetus. But when Dr. Werner zoomed in, they both saw it wasn't. The thing had too many eyes. Tiny black dots clustered around its misshapen head. Its mouth was open, teeth already growing inside. And there were wires. Thin metallic strands ran through the thing's skin, like veins made of copper. Marie covered her mouth to stop from screaming. The next day, the hospital held a private meeting in the radiology wing. No one from administration came. Just the night staff, the ones who heard the crying. They sat in a cold room with coffee that tasted like metal. Dr. Werner closed the door and locked it. "We're not supposed to talk about this," he said, rubbing his eyes. "But I think we have to." Nobody spoke. "We've been hearing the crying for weeks," Werner continued. "We ignored it. We thought maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone left a recording on the system." He shook his head. "But last night's scan proves it's real. Something's in there." It was Luca Meyer, the senior technician, who finally broke the silence. He told them about the MRI machine. It wasn't a new model. It had been shipped to Geneva from Aleppo, Syria, during the last war. The machine had belonged to a hospital that got bombed. Radiology equipment had survived, though the hospital hadn't. Luca whispered, "Some say machines remember things." He looked at the others with tired eyes. "I think the MRI brought something back with it." That night, they tried something dangerous. They left the MRI running, just to see what would happen. At 3:13 a.m., the crying started again. The machine activated by itself. The monitors lit up. Another autoscan appeared in the system. Marie and Dr. Werner watched the new images load. This time, the thing inside the machine had grown larger. It had limbs now. Small arms with twisting fingers. A mouth full of tiny teeth pressed against the glassy sac wall. And it was smiling. The images from the second scan didn't go away. They tried deleting the files, but the autoscan folder kept reappearing. Every night at 3:13 a.m., new images saved themselves into the system. And each time, the thing inside the sack got bigger. Its eyes multiplied. Its tiny hands developed thin claws. Veins of metal and fiber optics spread across its skin like roots in soil. By the fifth night, it wasn't just Marie and Dr. Werner seeing it. Other techs found the images too. Some started calling it the baby. Others whispered a different word in the break room. Dibuk. A spirit that clings to objects. One night, Marie stayed late to watch the monitors again. At 3:13 a.m., the lights flickered. The MRI machine powered itself on. She heard the baby cry, but this time, it wasn't alone. The hospital speakers crackled. And then she heard words mixed with the crying. A voice, soft and wet, whispered in French. Maman, OS2. Mommy, where are you? Marie's stomach turned to ice. Her daughter Chloe had died 3 years earlier. She'd been 6 months old. Marie had never told anyone about Chloe's death. But the voice knew. 2 nights later, a technician named Philippe Laurent killed himself. He was found in the MRI room, lying inside the machine. His phone was open beside him. On the screen was the last ultrasound image saved to the server. In it, the creature had grown teeth longer than its own body. And it was looking directly at Philippe, as if staring through the screen. Nobody talked about the suicide openly. But the night staff whispered about what Philippe had said before he died. It knows our names now. The hospital board called an emergency meeting after Philippe's death. Administrators wanted to shut the whole radiology wing down. But Dr. Werner argued against it. I don't think this is just about the MRI, he said. I think it's already spread. Luca agreed. The machine's field isn't just magnetic anymore. It's alive. Someone in the room laughed nervously. But no one disagreed. That night, they powered the MRI down. Pulled the plug. Shut the breakers off. At 3:13 a.m., the monitors still flickered to life. The machine hummed. A new autoscan appeared. This time, there was movement on the screen. The creature's small hands pressed against the inside of the sack, pushing toward the image frame like it wanted out. Its mouth moved. Not crying now. Smiling. Trying to speak. Marie turned away from the monitor and vomited into the trash bin. Dr. Werner realized something horrible. MRI machines create magnetic fields. They can pick up signals from the human body, the way cells vibrate, the way blood flows. But the crying baby in radiology wasn't just a scan. It was growing inside the magnetic field itself. That's why it didn't stop when they unplugged the machine. It had rooted itself into the air, into the walls, into the electric hum of the hospital. It was using the MRI like a womb. At midnight, the hospital directors agreed to a total shutdown. They disconnected the MRI permanently. Cut the power. Dismantled the control panels. They even brought in priests and an imam to bless the room. For one night, the hospital stayed quiet. No crying at 3:13 a.m. No new images. Everyone thought it was over. They were wrong. The next night, at 3:13 a.m., the baby started crying again. But this time, the sound didn't come from the MRI. It came from the emergency room walls. Nurses in the ER heard it first. Then patients did. The crying echoed from the vents, from the walls, from the floor itself. And this time, when the staff looked at the X-ray monitors, new images had appeared. Not MRI. Not ultrasound. These were chest X-rays of ER patients. But inside every X-ray, something new had grown. Behind each ribcage, hidden near the heart, was a small sac. Inside each sac was a fetus. Each one with too many eyes, tiny teeth, and long metal roots curling into the spine. By the next night, all the imaging systems in the hospital were infected. The CT scanners. The ultrasound machines. Even the portable X-ray units in the ICU. Every scan taken at night showed the same thing. Something growing inside people. Patients, nurses, doctors, security guards. Each image showed a tiny thing, nestled close to the heart, like a baby curled in a womb. The creatures were identical to the one in the MRI scans, eyes like black pearls, mouths full of teeth, thin silver wires curling out of their spines. Some of the sacs had already split open. At exactly 3:13 a.m. on the sixth night, the crying changed. It wasn't a baby sound anymore. It was louder now. More human. More aware. The emergency room monitors started recording something impossible. A magnetic field pulse inside the building's walls, as strong as an MRI scan, but with no power source. The hospital itself was humming, vibrating softly like a living thing. That's when the staff realized the truth. They hadn't just found the thing in the MRI. They had helped it be born. Luca tried to shut down the computer systems. He logged into the hospital's mainframe, desperate to stop the imaging network. When he checked the file directory, he found a new folder. Birth List 313. Inside were files labeled with the names of every patient and every staff member in the building. When he clicked his own name, the image popped up. A new X-ray of his chest. Inside his ribcage, the thing had already opened its eyes. And it was smiling at him. Marie stood in the radiology wing, staring at the MRI machine. It wasn't humming anymore. It wasn't even powered on. But the air around it was pulsing, like something alive. The walls of the hospital groaned softly, like they were breathing. She touched the wall beside the MRI room, and the cold plaster felt warm and wet. Almost like skin. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the entire hospital went dark. No lights. No monitors. But the crying sound continued. It came from the ceilings. From the vents. From the electrical wires. From inside the staff themselves. Marie could feel it vibrating in her throat, even though her mouth stayed shut. Dr. Werner dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. "We're part of it now," he whispered. Then he collapsed, eyes wide open, lips still moving silently. A few staff members tried to run. They bolted for the emergency exits, racing down the cold Geneva streets. But the crying followed them. When they looked into the windows of other buildings, other clinics, other hospitals, they saw the same thing happening there. Monitors glowing with impossible images. Walls humming with a soft, wet heartbeat. They realized it wasn't just Saint Antoine. The crying had spread. Back in the radiology wing, Marie sat at the MRI console for the last time. Her hands trembled, but she pressed the button to open the Autoscan 313 folder. A new image loaded. It wasn't a fetus anymore. It was a face. Her own. But with black eyes, metallic veins, and a mouth full of tiny teeth. By dawn, Clinique Saint Antoine stood quiet. No patients. No staff. Just machines humming softly in the dark. The MRI machine blinked once, then went still. The emergency room monitors displayed a single ultrasound image on every screen. A new heart, made of wires and bone, pulsing gently. And somewhere inside the hospital walls, beneath the cold marble floors of Geneva, the baby was still crying.